My name is Erin Gallagher, and I'm the executive director of This Is My Brave.
Can you tell me about This Is My Brave?
Yeah, of course. This Is My Brave is a national nonprofit dedicated to mental health storytelling. So we invite ordinary people to share their extraordinary stories of overcoming mental illness and substance use disorder on our stage. We produce live theatrical events, and we encourage our storytellers to use the performing arts to share their stories. So on our stage, we've had people share their stories using original song, poetry, creative essay. We've had stand-up comics. We've had dancers. We've had mimes on our stage. So any creative way that you can express your experience with these conditions is what we encourage on our stage. And we do this work to break down the stigma associated with these conditions. We want to normalize conversations. We want to normalize the experience. Mental illness and substance use disorder do not discriminate. And so we see that in the storytellers who are featured on our stage. And when they share and they speak openly about their experiences, they are able to break down stigma. And if people in the audience have lived through something similar, or if they love someone who has, they feel less alone as a result of hearing the stories that have been shared. So our goal is really just to break down the stigma, let people know that they're not alone, and let them know that help is available and that recovery, like what they see on the stage that's being demonstrated by the storytellers, is an achievable things in their lives. So it's really about offering hope and encouraging others to ask for the help that they need so that they can get to where our storytellers are finding themselves today.
What inspired you to get involved?
It's a sad story, unfortunately. I lost my son 7 years ago to suicide. And prior to that, I was in the world of education. But when he died, it was very, very sudden. He was not in treatment for mental illness or any sort of condition. So we really had no idea the degree to which he was suffering. And the second that he was gone, it's a switch flipped in me, and I almost immediately became a mental health advocate. I had to call my job that day and say I'm not coming in. And when I had a conversation with my boss later, she said, "What am I supposed to tell people? They're asking what's going on." And I said, "Well, you're going to tell people that my son died by suicide." And she was like, I can't say that. I don't think you want to tell anyone that." I'm like, "Well, if we don't tell people that this is what happened, I mean, how will people know that this is something that is a risk to our community? If I'm going to hide this, then I'm going to be a part of the problem." And I knew immediately that how devastating this was for our family, and how much I wanted to help prevent anybody else from having to go through something similar. So I met Jennifer Marshall, our co-founder, and then at that time in 2016 was the executive director of This Is My Brave. And I actually had just gone online to look. I was looking for something to inspire my daughters, because my son Jay, has two sisters. And so I found that at the time, This Is My Brave was selling bracelets that we call Brave beads. And I wanted to order some Brave beads for them to inspire them, that they could wear on their wrist and kind of look to it to feel brave as they wore it. And so I placed the order online, not really imagining that the executive director would be sitting in her kitchen fulfilling my Brave bead order. And at the time, because I lived in the Washington, D.C. area, and Brave is headquartered there. She just reached out and said, "It looks like you're right around the corner from me. And, I could drop these in the mail, or we could meet for coffee." And so we agreed to meet for coffee. And she told me all about the organization. And I just knew, right, just hearing the work that her passion to break down stigma and normalize conversations and let other people know they're not alone. I just knew, because stigma had to have been a part of Jay's story, it had to have contributed significantly to his suffering, that I wanted to be a part of this organization and do what I could to to share this message and take it to people who need it the most. So it took us a minute. We started talking in late 2016, and I finally came on board in 2019. So, but I've never looked back. I don't want to do anything else in my life. It's really fulfilling work. And it's incredible to see the impact that we have on storytellers and audience members. The stories we hear, just how This Is My Brave has changed people's lives, is so inspiring to me. And it really keeps me going, even through the hard days.
How has helping storytellers share their voice help your own healing process?
Well, first of all, it lets me know that I'm not alone. This can be a lonely road, a grief journey, especially a mother's grief journey. So, to see that other people have endured hard things in their lives and they've found their way through that, it does inspire me to get up every day and do my best to find my way through. And, you know, we can't do what we do at This Is My Brave without the storytellers. They're really the stars of this movement. And I'm inspired by brave storytellers every single day. So, I mean, people have been through hard things. I'm not the only one. And that it feels better to know that we're all going through something and that we can find inspiration in one another.
I know for me, when I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder too in 2019, I tried to look online and there's like nothing to see or watch a video about people going through the same thing, because that's the big thing is like, am I the only one going through this?
Mm.
With the performance, how is it not only helping the people, but helping the audience as well?
Well, so in 2016, we started doing research on the impact that This Is My Brave has on both storytellers and audience members. And so we have gathered evidence to show that This Is My Brave is, in fact, a contact-based stigma reduction program, which is, of all the ways to break down stigma, contact-based stigma reduction programs are the most effective. And so, when people stand on stage and they share their personal stories, I think it normalizes the experience. We tend to want to other people who, if we think about somebody who's living with a mental illness, that can't be anybody I know, that has to be those other people, maybe, and we tend to, I think, assign character flaws to people who live with mental illness or substance use disorder. And when people stand on stage and they look like your neighbor, your best friend, your mother, your cousin, your coworker, I think that really is very powerful way to show the people in the audience that this really can happen to anyone, and there are ways through it. So in that way, I think, what we try to measure for is that sense of that feeling of distance between somebody who's living with a mental illness and the audience member. And our research shows that the sense of distance is lessened after a Brave show. The other piece is the sense that recovery is possible, that is strengthened in people after watching our show. They do have more hope and an understanding that people can achieve recovery or resume their sense of normalcy even with a diagnosis.
Have you seen storytellers' confidence improve with getting on the stage?
You're just hitting on all our talking points, Mike. This is great. Thank you for teeing these questions up. Right. So we actually, yes, we had anecdotally heard from many storytellers in the beginning parts of the organization that being a part of the show, joining the cast, working together as a group to create this production what was very empowering for storytellers. So in fact, in 2020, when we had to come off stage,
Yeah.
obviously, when the pandemic hit, we couldn't do our live show, and we just didn't. For a minute, we're like, what are we going to do with ourselves if we're not producing shows? Um, but what we decided to do was really explore. We knew that we'd heard this over and over again from storytellers, that they did feel stronger and more confident as a result of being a part of the show. So we decided to explore our theory of change, and really look at what that is and try to define it more clearly. And when you do that, you start with the outcome. So we did a lot of interviews of our like over 100 storytellers we interviewed, to ask them to really talk to us about what the experience of being a part of This Is My Brave was like, and really what they felt, after that experience. And through those 100 or so conversations, we started to hear themes emerge. And one of the themes is that people felt more empowered as a result of being a part of the cast. And so then, with that information, we had to develop. We used that to develop our theory of change, to really imagine what's happening in that space when everybody comes together to work together as a cast and a production team to make this show happen. What is happening in that time together that has created those outcomes for those individuals? And that's how our theory of change and the 5 pillars that we developed, or that we identified, I should say, came to be. And now we train all of our production teams as they're organizing themselves and getting ready to start a Brave production. We train them first in that theory of change, so that we can be certain that when storytellers do show up, that the environment is ready to support them. It's a safe space where people will feel empowered, and they'll feel an authentic connection to those around them. They'll feel a sense of reciprocity. They'll have opportunities for transformation. These are the things that we train to in the Brave production. So, we want to honor the people who come out for our shows. We want them to feel a part of this. We want them to really feel a sense of community. And so we want to just make sure that every production team is able to create that for the storytellers who join us for this event.
What are some of the things that motivate you?
In my work, or personally, what part?
Both.
Well, in my work, I want to serve our Brave community, both those people who have been a part of our show and those people that will be a part of our show one day. I really feel inspired every day to do my best work on behalf of those individuals. Obviously, I'm inspired by the challenge of breaking down stigma, normalizing conversations. I think stigma is, it really is just it's a tool of power, and it's disempowering to the person who is being controlled by it. And it's empowering by whatever force is imposing it, society, the community, family sometimes. So I think when you can watch somebody take back that power and say, you can't tell me I can't talk about this. You can't tell me that this experience is less important or should be kept secret. To watch somebody come to that point where they're ready, no matter what, to take back that power and really use it for a force of good in their own life, that's incredible to watch. That's very inspiring to me. And then on a personal note, obviously, I want to create a world where, my family can thrive. Families like ours can thrive. Individuals don't have to ever, if we're breaking down the stigma right now. So it's out there. It is controlling some people's decisions about whether they should disclose their condition. But one day, I hope that it's not even a factor in people's lives. I've said this before, in the late 70s, early 80s, when people were falling victim to breast cancer or testicular cancer, we didn't say those words out loud. We would say, oh, she's got a female problem, or he's got, a male sort of cancer. Nobody would say those words. And now we have bumper stickers that
Yeah.
say the tatas, like we've gone fully all the way around. Like that's where we need to be with mental health. Like uh, you know, let's just make it that ordinary. Take away the power that seems to have, that keeps people from speaking openly, because that just prevents people from getting the help that they need.
I know for me, when I was diagnosed, I told work and I was telling some people and I was feeling confident, maybe I should say something publicly. And then with work, I got told from HR, it may make other people uncomfortable, so don't say it. So then I didn't say anything for 2.5 years because it felt like a negative. And then once I finally said it, I have the confidence. But do you see the stigma loosening up since you started at This Is My Brave?
To some degree, yes, but maybe because I'm just in the middle of it all
Yeah,
the time. And so I see the people around me who are already in this industry, um, making those, changes and those modifications, and changing the way they speak about things, to be more inclusive and, person-centered, and, avoid labels, those sort of things. But honestly, I go out into, my community, and I hear people reference mental illness in hushed ways, or veiled, language. And I kind of think maybe we're not, maybe we haven't gotten there yet, So there are days where I feel very hopeful, and then there are days like I just think, wow, there's so much more work that needs to be done. So it's going to require a lot of us,
yeah,
um, to just continue to say what we've been saying. And I think it's amazing that. Can you tell me? Do you mind me asking you a question?
yeah. Go for it.
Can you tell me where the pivotal moment was for you, where you decided, you weren't going to take that advice from HR anymore, and you really were casting that aside and deciding it's time for me to speak openly? What was that for you?
Well, with that work, actually, my contract wasn't renewed, so I moved. I started working somewhere else, and then I started doing interviews with people who are going through mental illness. So I started getting confident, and then with my new job, I then just told my bosses, and within 15 minutes, my boss called me and said, "Whatever you need," and all that. So then that gave me the confidence to say something publicly, and then just getting that off my chest, it
Mm-hmm.
has just changed the world, that it's not a negative. And I want to do whatever I can to help people who are going through, oh no, if I say something, people are going to think I'm different, or anything what people would think.
Right, right. That's great. That's amazing. Yeah. Good for you. I'm glad that you were able to get to that. It feels, I'm sure. I mean, in terms of my story, there are times where I have to weigh, when people ask me, how many children do you have, for example.
Yeah,
There's times when I answer that, in a way that would avoid any sort of, difficult conversation, because we're at a neighborhood barbecue, or I just
right.
met this person, So I'm constantly weighing disclosure, and I do probably take a little longer than others might to reveal, our entire family's story. So, um, I think, but it does kind of get to a point where, even, if you've got a new friend and you've been hanging, I mean, this is how it goes for me. We've been hanging out for a while. It'd be nice to invite them over for dinner or something. And then I realized, well, they're going to come to my house and they're going to see photos. I've only ever talked about two daughters, and they're going to see photos of a family of five here, and so then I have to, before I set the invitation to bring them over, I have to kind of figure out when I'm going to be able to share this part of our story with them. And that's a it's a lot to have to carry and think about. um I wish I could be just
Right.
more out with our story, all the time. It would be maybe a little easier, but you know
Where do you want to see the organization next, say, to 3 to 5 years?
well, I would love to see This Is My Brave be a household name. All of us that work at Brave now, when we tell people, they say, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" And we tell them what we do, when we tell them where we work and what we do, most people say, "Oh, I've never heard of that before." And even people that we meet in the mental health arena have never heard of this before. So we need to, I think, really elevate our profile, so we are more recognizable name and brand, and people are more aware of the work that we do and more excited to participate with us in some way, as a storyteller, as a producer, as an audience member. We do have options for people who maybe aren't ready to do all of those things, could certainly join us for some virtual events where they can be brave with us, but maybe on a smaller scale, like, walking 2,200 steps a day for suicide prevention awareness, or, taking part in our upcoming Teen Mental Health Month that we're going to do in August. Those are ways that people who maybe aren't ready to stand on a stage in the spotlight in front of 250 people and tell their story, they can still support our work. They can be allies with us and with the community to raise awareness and elevate the conversation about mental health without going all in on that sort of
Yeah.
broadcasting of their story. So, but we'd love to be more of a household name for sure. That's definitely a goal.
Can you tell me about the Teen Mental Health Month?
Sure. Yeah. It's an initiative we are launching this year. So, in just a couple weeks, we've decided to designate August as Teen Mental Health Month. And during that time, we will share stories from teens who have lived experience and are willing to talk openly about it, so that we can get those stories out onto the internet, so that when young people maybe find themselves going through something and they're seeking inspiration from the internet like you did, that they'll find those stories
Yeah.
and be able to hear from someone just like them, or mostly like them, another teen who has gone through something as well. And hopefully they will feel less alone as a result of hearing those stories. We're collecting resources or events to highlight on our page, so that when people hear about Teen Mental Health Month, they come to our landing page, they will see the logos of our partner organizations, and they'll see the resources that those organizations have created that will help to normalize conversations about mental health. There's so many amazing resources available right now, and they sit in all these disparate places. So if we can pull them all together into one spot where people can click and access, a guide to starting conversations in your home about mental health, it would be that's a downloadable tool that will be available. If there's a screening tool, there will be screening tools available. Those are coming from different organizations, but we're going to have them as partners, and we'll be featuring all of that in one spot. And then going into September, in memory of my son, Jay, we are doing the Jaywalkers Challenge, where we will recruit teams to gather the teams. The goal is to, throughout the month of September, from September 1st to September 30th, as a team, to complete 800,000 steps during that month. And if as a team you complete those 800,000 steps, you will have walked a step in honor or in memory of every life lost to suicide worldwide annually. And so, while teams are walking, we will encourage them to do some talking about suicide prevention awareness, because we know that we can't prevent suicide if we're not willing to talk about it. So we want to start
Right.
conversations during the month that will change the way people think about suicide, help them understand, that it's happening, unfortunately, in many communities. The numbers of suicides are ticking upwards very quickly. So
Yeah.
we need to do anything we can to raise awareness, and help people understand that help is available, that feeling suicidal is not a lifelong condition, that you can get support, and that will go, that will go away. It's not a condition that, it's often a temporary idea, but it's normal to have those feelings, and there are people who can help to alleviate that, those symptoms in your life, and restore wellness to a place where you aren't feeling like that anymore.